welcome to the Psychic Side here on the A1R Radio Network, the largest psychic radio network on Earth. And we're Moonstruck TV too. So I'm John Cappello, and this is the Psychic Side, and we are talking about psychic ability and how to develop them. I hope that you have gotten something out of the first few shows that we've done here on the network, and that you'll continue to get some new information maybe about psychic ability. Just learning a little bit about my philosophy, because I want to teach you a little bit, if I can, teach you a little bit about how this works, or at least the way I think it works. And hopefully we'll have some discussions here later on as the program grows, and as we get to know you, our audience, and you get to know me. So last week, we talked about a lot of things. I'm just going to check here. We talked a little bit about where I was and why you want to be a psychic, about how you want to be a better person. But this week, we want to talk a little bit about how the psychic senses work. Now, before I get into that, I just want to say that this weekend I'll be at the Intellichia Psychic Fair in Plano, and I'll be doing my first spirit gallery in a couple of years, since in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because of the pandemic, I just haven't done much of that type of work. But I'm going to start it up again in my home turf. And hopefully we'll grow that turnout again. But right now we want to talk a little bit about how psychic senses work. And the way I start out with that is I talk a little bit about the different types of senses we have. And for me, we have three types of senses. We have our physical senses, we have our psychic senses, and then we have our remote psychic senses. Now, we all know about our physical senses, the seeing, touching, feeling, smelling, so on and so forth. Those empirical things, we call them empirical. We call those things things that we know to be real. But the psychic senses are identical to our physical senses. It's just they are extensions. The extensions of our psychic senses involve the area that is immediately around us. And so we're able to sense information around people and sense entities, a presence, mediumship type items or areas around other people. We're able to do that. And then comes our remote psychic senses. Our remote psychic senses, you may be familiar with remote viewing. Remote viewing is the most popular of all of the remote psychic senses. But we have remote psychic senses, and with our feelings, with our knowledge, with taste and smell. And these are things that a lot of people may not talk about, but they exist because it happens all the time. People can pick up information about those that are in other parts of the country. If you have an uncle that had a heart attack, or you had an experience with someone that fell ill, or just some other type of knowledge, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, I felt something when there was that earthquake." So those are examples of remote psychic senses. And I believe they all are valid. I believe they are all needed as part of the human experience, and that they all can be developed over time. And that's what I hope to do with you. So when you are using your psychic senses, you do have to raise your awareness. I spoke a little bit about that last week, about raising your awareness when you are working with your psychic senses, because what you're doing is you're not just observing with your physical senses. You're not just receiving physical sensations. You're receiving psychic sensations which are beyond the limits of your physical senses, because that's what psychic ability is. Psychic ability is the soul's ability to capture information from beyond the limits of our physical senses. And that works for both just the psychic senses and for the remote psychic senses. So it's something to remember and something to practice when you are developing your own skills. So I hope that that makes sense to you. And you know, I'm always interested in receiving emails. I'm always interested in getting people to let me know their opinion. I'm just not ready to do that on the program just yet because I want to get some material out there so that you can argue with me if you want to. But it doesn't make sense to just in such a short period of time not have the meat on the bone first. So that's what I want. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you some information that you can think about and work with. And if you want to buy my soul exercises for the open mind, that's my workbook. That's the workbook that I use where I put all of these definitions and these ideas down on paper. Now, another thing is that you want to know why we have our psychic abilities. And there are 5 reasons, basically. The first one is fight or flight. You know, that's a psychic response. Because you've raised your awareness, you are very, very sensitive to your surroundings, and that's what it takes to be psychic, to be very aware and very observant of anything that's out of the ordinary. You know, secondly, to gain perception, because what happens when you are working with your psychic abilities. Ideas and revelation, aha moments come from nowhere, and they broaden your perspective. So that's an important thing to recognize as being part of psychic ability. Thirdly, it helps you solve problems because so many times we dwell on issues and then suddenly out of nowhere comes the answer. And that doesn't mean you haven't worked hard. It doesn't mean that you haven't methodically followed a pattern. But that one instance that you get the answer right is when then you can identify the psychic impression. And because why didn't it come before? It was incubating there. It just showed up when it was at the right time. So another reason why we have psychic ability is that it validates our physical senses. Okay, what does that mean? It means that when you have a situation where you see something like reading a book, don't judge a book by its cover. The psychic senses validate whether or not that you're in a safe zone or you're not in a safe zone, or this is real or this is not real. So when you go see a magician, it's their job to fool the physical senses, and so your psychic senses make you skeptical. It makes you a little bit weary or a little bit more of a person that's going to be cautious, because if your psychic senses are not in line with your physical senses, then you may pause, and that's a good thing, because oftentimes we don't pause when we should, and a good example is a first impression, because a lot of times we do not act upon, and when we don't act upon a first impression, we can find ourselves making an error. You know, so you want your psychic senses to validate your physical senses, and then finally, we have psychic ability so we can create. Uniquely, this unique ability to create, this unique ability to capture ideas, capture concepts, is something that no other species on Earth has. And up to now, we don't have the interaction with extraterrestrials to let us know what's going on there. A lot of times people have said that it's the extraterrestrials that inspire us. that give us that information. So we don't know yet. We just need to trust that and trust that that information will come. So it's very interesting. It's very fascinating to ponder these things and to think about how psychic ability works and why we have it. And it's, for me, it's important that you have an answer for those that might be skeptical, those that might say to you, "Oh, psychic ability doesn't exist." Well, it does exist, and this is something that I just saw a bunch of smiley faces or that came up. I don't know what this is, so maybe we have some listeners. I don't know, but so welcome. That just came out of nowhere. So maybe that was a psychic impression. LOL. Very good, very good. So we have a couple of minutes left, and so what I want to do is I want to give you an idea of how psychic abilities work. And so here, I want to see if you can see this. Can you see this? Can you see this rubber band ball? Okay. Just imagine us and imagine people as having energy surrounding you like a rubber band ball. Okay. Well, what happens is when something is out of whack like that, then that's my rubber band ball or my psychic awareness or my ability to capture information usually can pick up something like that. So it either picks it up on a fragment or a line. Okay. And so I want you to understand that, and I want you to be aware of these ideas, because we're going to be working with them as we go. And I hope that you'll stick with us so you can find out a little bit more about how these ideas work. Because here on the psychic side, we believe that this is an important part of learning a little bit about yourself. And so next week, I am going to talk a little bit about the psychic test, which I hope that you will tune in and learn about. So for right now, that's about it here for the psychic side. I'm John Cappello here on the A1R Psychic Radio Network and Moonstruck TV. I really enjoy talking to you, and I hope that you'll be here next week, same time and same place. See you soon. Bye-bye.